Once we understand what lists are and how much information they contain, we also usually recognize that we'll need to work with lists frequently. Items and lists are used in a variety of ways throughout QuickBooks. So, in addition to adding and editing data using lists, we might also want to use them to easily review information. That's important not only when setting up our company file, but as part of maintenance and our day to day operations as well. When we use lists to review information, having them sorted in a particular order, for example, can be very useful. Let's use our chart of accounts to review how we can organize our QuickBooks lists. We can access the chart of accounts by clicking or tapping the List menu on the top left of the screen and choosing the very first option, which is for the chart of accounts. Notice we also can use the keyboard shortcut at any time, which is Control A. Now, this opens up the chart of accounts in a small window, but this is a big list, so we're going to maximize the window so we can see more things on screen. One way to sort the list is simply dragging and dropping things where we want them to go. For example, we can currently see that we have a checking account, a petty cash account, as well as a savings account. Maybe we would like to see the checking and savings accounts together. So we can simply drag and drop the savings account. We'll click to select it, but notice that you can't just press and hold and drag up and down. We need to be over the small diamond that is at the far left edge. The key thing here is make sure that your mouse pointer looks like a four-headed arrow. With that, we can press and hold, and now as we drag up or down, we'll see a dashed line that shows us where we're going to drop or place the account. We simply release the mouse, and we've just resorted the list according to our own criteria. Now, a couple of things to be careful about. If we move to the bottom of the list, we notice that we have some accounts that have parent accounts and sub-accounts. It's important when dragging and dropping that we don't inadvertently drag an account and make it a sub-account of another account. Basically, pay attention to that dashed line, and it will tell us exactly where we're going to be placing it, which will help prevent this issue. The other thing that's specific to the chart of accounts is we can't simply rearrange these really in any order we want. If we look at the right side of the list, we'll see that the initial account types are all bank accounts. We were able to move the savings account between the checking and petty cash accounts because they're all bank accounts. But we can't move accounts within types. In other words, we couldn't move the savings account so that it was part of the other current assets grouping. We have to honor the account types with the chart of accounts. Now, we could do a whole lot of dragging and dropping with all of the accounts that are in this chart, but there is an automated way to sort as well, and it's very simple. We simply need to move to the top of the list and click or tap on any of the column names. For example, if we click or tap name, we are now sorting by name, and we get to see either an up or down arrow designating if we are sorting ascending or descending by that column. If we click or tap on the column again, it toggles or reverses. So we can toggle between ascending and descending by simply clicking or tapping the column header. We can do this with any one of our columns. You may notice when we do this that to the far left-hand side of the column names is a large black diamond. This tells us that we are currently automatically sorting. In other words, when this diamond is here, we can no longer drag and drop because we already have a criteria. We've said we want to sort by name. If we want to disable that, we can simply click or tap the black diamond. Now we're free to drag and drop to our heart's content once again. If we ever get completely carried away, or someone else has manually sorted a list in a way that just doesn't make sense to us, have no fear, because we can always put the list back in the way QuickBooks originally had it sorted. One way to do this is to move to the bottom left of the screen and click or tap the Account button. Now, the actual name of this button will change depending on which list we're working with, but since this is the chart of accounts, it says Account. Here, we can choose Resort List, and that will put it back into the order that we originally designated. QuickBooks is always considerate, though, and it asks us before it does so if we're sure that we want to return the list to the original order. We can simply say OK, and it will put it back the way it originally was listed. Now, this button at the bottom left of every list actually has several very useful options. Let's go ahead and display it again. And for the chart of accounts, we can see something that can be very helpful. It talks about whether we want to view this in a hierarchical view or a flat view. If we look carefully, we can see just above this menu that payroll liabilities is a parent or master account, and it has sub-accounts like AEIC payable, which is currently selected, as well as direct deposit liabilities and more. If we don't want to see the hierarchy and we just want to see the accounts, we can choose the flat view. Notice now that this is just a simple list, and payroll liabilities is still the master account, but all of the sub-accounts have had the payroll liabilities added to the beginning, followed by a colon to tell us that these are sub-accounts. This is just a personal choice. We're going to go ahead and put it back to the hierarchical view by simply displaying the menu and choosing that view from the list. One thing that is really important to remember about QuickBooks is that we do not generally delete things in QuickBooks. Our transactions are tied to any number of related accounts and items, and in their entirety, they make up the accounting trail. Unless we just created something and then changed our mind, it's probably more appropriate to make something inactive rather than to physically delete it. This makes sure that our records are complete without missing pieces. In fact, QuickBooks won't even allow us to delete something if it has related activity associated with it. If we ever wanted or needed to, we certainly could delete accounts. We can also delete other items, remember, as long as they don't have any related activity. So let's just select one of our accounts. This one happens to be subcontracted federal withholding. If we right-click and look at the top of the menu, we can choose Delete Account. This is where QuickBooks comes in and says, sorry, but you can't delete or merge an account that is set up as a 1099 account because that's being used in other places. We simply say, thank you for sharing, and of course it does not allow us to delete that account. This is a good thing. It keeps us out of trouble. If we right-click on the account and instead of trying to delete it, we say to make the account inactive, we get a similar message, but we do have an option. This is again trying to give us good information and advice. It says this account, again, is used in a 1099 category. Are we sure we want to make it inactive? And at this point, we could say yes. Notice that the account disappeared from our chart of accounts. But don't worry, it's not really gone. It's just hidden in the default view. If we display the account menu from the bottom left of the screen, we can see that we have the option to take a look at different types of accounts. One of those options is whether or not we want to show inactive accounts. Generally, we do not. The reason we make them inactive is to get them out of our view because they're not currently being used, and it simplifies our work in QuickBooks. If we want to see inactive accounts, though, we can simply toggle this feature on, and now we can see that our entry displays once again. It does show an X in the leftmost column, letting us know that it is currently marked as inactive. On occasion, and it is usually on rare occasion, we might want to make something that is inactive active again. If you thought that we could probably do that by selecting the item and right-clicking, you would be absolutely correct. We can see that the option that used to say Make Account Inactive has now toggled and is Make Account Active. A simple click puts it back in the ballgame. While we do not want to be too anxious in marking anything inactive, if we have items and lists that have not been used, probably for at least a few years, we can make them inactive and clean up our list without having the fear of losing all of the information related to them. This type of sorting and displaying or even really filtering our lists is something that we do very often and is very common in QuickBooks. Another thing that we might want to do is simply resize columns so that everything fits nicely on a screen. We can currently see that the account names are taking up an inordinate amount of space, and none of our accounts are that long. Just like in Excel, if we move up to the right edge of a column, get the double-headed arrow, and then drag left or right, we can simply and easily resize columns so that we can get more to fit on the screen. Gee, did you even know that there was all of this other information to the right, including our balance totals and if there are attachments? Having everything fit on a screen based on your screen configuration is really one of those nice personalization features that we have. If we ever wanted to print a hard copy of a list, we could do that by using the button on the bottom left of the screen as well. There's always an option here to print the list. Now, it may not be a pretty list at this point, but we certainly can get a hard copy, which is sometimes what we need. The last thing we'd like to talk about when it comes to lists is the fact that we have to remember they're not just lists. They actually have other functionality. For example, if we scroll back to the top of this list, and we were curious to know what was going on with our checking account, we can always double-click an item in a list. In this case, it actually opens a register for the checking account. Alternately, if we right-clicked on something like Utilities, it might give us a report that shows us what all of our utility expenses have been. It simply depends on the type of account that we double-click on. But remember, in lists, double-clicking will always open and show us the detail behind whatever item it is that we double-clicked. Knowing how to manipulate lists is an important skill if we want to use QuickBooks efficiently and effectively. Things like sorting and modifying the columns displayed and even marking items as inactive all allow us to work within the data we store in QuickBooks more effectively and efficiently. And that, I think, is everybody's goal.